Hello, BookTube. Well, it's time for another library tour. This is bookshelf number 7 of the tall east wall bookcase. we're gradually wearing this thing down. And we'll start with transverse books. This time we have some transverse books. The first one being an overlooked classic of the Western canon. This is the Diaries of John Evelyn, who was the I don't know if you can tell from that picture, but when he was a young man, he was gorgeous, and he was a best friend of Samuel Pepys. And like Pepys, he caught the fad of the day to keep a diary. Now his diary isn't anywhere near as popular as Pepys, probably because it's more self-aware. The Diary of Samuel Pepys, the marvel of it is that you don't understand why he's writing it. You don't understand why he's admitting the things he's admitting to in a document that's written down that somebody could find. This is a public official. His diary seems unconscious. It really is the closest that I know of to being able to eavesdrop on the thoughts of another person. Evelyn doesn't do that. His diary isn't like that at all. He has an eye on presentation, but it's still fantastic, and he did it for a long time. He lived a long time, and I don't understand why there aren't constantly updated Penguin Classic editions of this book. I don't understand why it's not as well loved or well quoted as Pepys. It's a marvelous book, and I love the old Oxford edition. I haven't found a large trade paperback Oxford edition. I haven't found a good hardcover edition, so I keep the paperback. Same thing with this is another Oxford paperback that I don't need. As some of you will have noticed already from this channel, my affection for this particular book. This is Bram Stoker's Dracula, and I love the notes of the Oxford paperback, but I gotta confess, the reason I have this is because of the Bela Lugosi cover. I shouldn't admit such things, but I do love it. Although, the last time I read Dracula was on my phone, on a Project Gutenberg paperback, perfectly clear, and totally enjoyable there at all times. So I guess if something were to happen to my phone and my Kindle and my iPad and my MacBook and my MacBook Air, I would probably reread this paperback, but I don't know. That's a discussion for another video. And then the last of the transverse books is the Oxford edition of the love poems of Ovid, that got him in so much trouble, and that are, I confess, not my favorite Ovid things. They made his name. They made him hugely popular. There were months where you couldn't walk down the street in Rome without hearing his poem set to some jaunty tune. I prefer other things. I love poetry just in general. Always strikes me as a little bit boring. I know that'll be totally antithetical to a lot of you out there, but it's always struck me as a bridge too far. I don't believe you can capture love in poetry. So the long stretches of it in Shakespeare, the long stretches of it elsewhere, the closest that I've ever come to reading a poem that seems to convey something of the contradiction and the turmoil and the agony of love is John Donne, and he was nuts. so what are you going to do? But then we move on to the books themselves, and we start with the big one. This is Helen Vendler's great book on Shakespeare's sonnets. Where you get, let me show you here. You get facsimile reprint of what it looked like. Then you get a cleaned up reprint, and then she just bangs on. She's our greatest living poetry critic, and this is my favorite of her books. I know there are a lot of people who prefer her book on the sonnets of Keats, but I was very glad that this was done in a big oversized hardcover. I was very glad that it was made into a visual object as well as a scholarly object. It is something I pull off the shelf and reread because, when you go back to Shakespeare, you go to the sonnets and you want a really good analysis. I have the Oxford, I have the Penguin, and I have this. This is her masterwork, I think. Then we have some dude bro, some man's man fiction. This is the short stories of John Cheever. Which I love. I went through a long period where I did not. I went through a long period where I hated suburb fiction in the American subgenre of suburb fiction. There was a long period where I thought, yeah, okay, great. So your dad worked in an insurance company and you think there's poetry in that. But I've learned otherwise with Cheever and with John O'Hara and all these people that write about the ordinary experiences of the emasculating ability of the American workplace. Just, and also, I mean, he gets a lot of crap because his women characters are sort of poor, sort of predictable. But the more you dig into the stories, the less that fair that seems. There are quite a few. There's a lot in this book. There's a whole world in this book, and only one critic said that at the time that it came out. Then we have, this is something, if you've been following these library tours, you will be able to predict. In fact, you'll be wondering, we're 4 books in by now, you'll be wondering where it is. Yes, the next book is an old book about Boston. This is Boston and the Boston Legend. Let me get you, this is an old library cover by Lucius Beebe. This is, there's Quincy Market. And the thing is full of lovely. You've got the onion skin paper to protect it, and then you've got the beginning of the book, Boston and the Boston Legend by Lucius Beebe. And this is from the 1930s, and it's full of artwork. There's Post Office Square, which doesn't have any crack addicts in it. In this, it does now. You can't take a picture of Post Office Square without. Let me get you another. Towards Bowdoin Square. See, these are it's full of Boston landmarks and his ruminations on them, and it's got potted Boston history, but it's also got Bunker Hill Monument. There we go. It's also got lots and lots of side ruminations on Boston of the day, Boston of the days the beginning part of the 20th century when he was writing this, and I love that. And then we have a block of science fiction. You'll have to forgive me. These are big trade paperback editions of Frank Herbert. These are the ones that have these old psychedelic covers. This is God Emperor of Dune, my favorite of the Dune books, in which our main character is thousands of years old and not human anymore. I just love it. Then we have the two that followed that, Heretics of Dune, and these big trade paperbacks, and Chapter House Dune. I have a minority opinion when it comes to the books in the Dune cycle. Everybody agrees that the first, Dune, is not only a great book, but perhaps the greatest science fiction novel ever written. Everybody thinks the second book, Dune Messiah, is a complete failure. I don't so much agree with that. I don't think it was written in the way that the other books were written. I don't think it was written with the aim that the other books were written. I think holding it up as a big tent-post piece in a series neglects that fact and therefore reads it wrong. I just recently reread it. I found a hardcover and reread it, and I don't know what it doesn't stand up, of course, as one of these great Dune novels, but it's definitely is. There's definitely something there. It belongs in the series. I just don't think it belongs as a standalone book. I kind of wish that Frank Herbert's son, who hasn't stopped profiting off his father's dead body in 30 years, I wish that he would maybe attend to that. Maybe make it a short type addendum to Dune. Bring out a big trade paperback of Dune that has Dune Messiah as a small type addendum, something like that. So that we stop looking at it as something that wants to stand on its own as a book. But anyway, then the popular opinion is that Children of Dune recovers some of the magic of Dune, and that then the series goes steadily downhill. I don't think that's true at all. God Emperor of Dune is my favorite of the books and is jam-packed with thought. And Chapter House Dune and Heretics of Dune are the same way. They're packed with content. They're packed with personalities and implications and ideas in a way that would be prodigal to 99% of all other science fiction novels. So I don't know how they can be called failures. And they take the story far away from the desert planet of Dune. I find them tremendously impressive and also tremendously enjoyable. Oh my, the Bene Gesserit at war. That is the thing you wait 4 books to see, and then it doesn't disappoint. Then we have something, I think I've showed it on this channel before. It's a volume that I found just recently at the Battle. It's The Travels of Mark Twain, and this is an old volume in which the editor just picks the best bits from his voluminous travel writings and puts them together in one book. And as much as I love the voluminous travel writings, I really like that too. I really like having one book where I can just pick out, so I don't have to go to the shelf, find the right Penguin classic, pull it down, and then find the section on the pyramids. Instead, I've got the Milan Cathedral, I've got the pyramids, I've got all the stuff that where Twain really felt his oats and did a really good job. I love anthologies like that when they're done smartly. I love it. Then we have a book some of you may have seen on Jason Purcell's channel. Now all of a sudden, thousands of people start paying attention. He's dreamy, I know. This is Gil Hyatt's book, Poets in a Landscape. This is it's full of old vintage black and white photos in which he takes us to the hometowns of the various classic Roman poets and the areas all around them, the countryside all around them, and manages, some of it is silly. A lot of it is fanciful reconstruction. But when Gil Hyatt does fanciful reconstructions, you want to do it with him. He's that smart. And it's a wonderful book. I don't know quite how to describe it. It's a meditation on the classics as much as it is an exploration of them. And it takes you into his mind about these authors. It doesn't so much reveal any archaeology the way he might have hoped it would, but the combination of his ruminations and the pictures, it's also, I don't think it's in print anymore. I think it's been out of print for a long time. But if you were, for instance, wanting to get to know the Roman poets, you were thinking, I've heard these things, they crop up all the time, they're all over Shakespeare, maybe I'd like to know more about them and start to read them. There is no better introduction volume than this. Even The Roman Way by Edith Hamilton is not as good as this. It's just a shame it's not around anymore, but you might be able to find it. I found a couple of copies over the years. Then we have something that's relatively modern, as you can tell because the pub sheet is sticking out of it. This is The Risen by David Anthony Durham. This is his novel of Spartacus. And I loved it. I just loved it. I don't know why. It technically isn't. I don't mean to wave a red flag in front of his many fans, especially the thousands and thousands of his fans who are in the military. But it's not exactly an exceptional Spartacus novel. But I really loved it. I don't quite know why, but I brought it in here right away and haven't second guessed it. Then we have a classic of Western literature. This is Moon Tusk. And it is a science fiction novel about husky, bi-curious slave men on a planet full of telepathic mastodons. And it really is the best book of its kind. And what's that you say, book 2? You've never read a book about husky, bi-curious slave men on a planet full of telepathic mastodons? Well, don't worry. I'm sure you'll get the hang of reading diversely eventually. Then we have an old favorite here on this channel, The Tale of Genji. This is the Royale Tyler translation, the big Penguin Classic Deluxe edition with the deckled edges and the French flaps. Had to have it. I have the hardcover, and I had to have the paperback because it's just so good. This is maybe the best. There have been 4 English language translations of Genji from start to finish, 4 unabridged ones. I don't know, maybe not best. They all have their strengths and weaknesses. This is such a good one, though. And it also has the benefit of being in the prettiest edition, the prettiest paperback edition. Penguin really pulled out the stops for it, which I was very grateful to see. Then we have a couple of Modern Library giants. The Modern Library reprint series did giant volumes years and years and years ago. And a couple of them I really liked. A lot of them I really liked. The first of them is the poems and plays of Robert Browning. That's him reclining on his couch. He is totally out of favor now in poetry circles, but I love him. I absolutely love him. Quote whole chunks of him from heart. I delve into his poetry. I love it. It's so adventurous. It's so full. It's so world building that I lose myself in him in a way that I love to do with poets, and you can't do anymore. Poetry has become like those spikes on ledges that cities install to repel the homeless. Well, when it comes to poetry, we are all homeless, and we can't sleep there anymore. There's no comfort offered by poetry anymore. There's no place to go to relax in it or to enjoy the author's way with words or profundity. Instead, it's red tricycle, screaming, asparagus. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for collecting your genius grant for that. Don't let the rest of us trouble you. Anyway, the next modern library giant is the whole works of Nathaniel Hawthorne, and there's the New England port with the Puritan hats on the cover. I don't know why I have this. I really don't. I love the compactness of it, but I don't think if I want to read a big volume of Hawthorne's tales, for instance, I would wait around at the Brattle until I found a nice old illustrated edition of just the tales. Same thing with all of his books, including what I consider to be not only his masterpiece, but one of the great novels of the American literature, The House of the Seven Gables. I don't know why this guy is revered for The Scarlet Letter, except maybe that it's short. The House of the Seven Gables is a trip, as young people used to say. So I don't know why I have this volume, because I'm not sure that I think it's one of the omnibus editions of an author that I won't ever use. And I came to it once for one section of one book, but haven't consulted it after that. So it's the branch underneath it is probably creaking here for being in this room, in the Holy of Holies. And then the last book that we'll do for this time around, the last book on this shelf is a classic, and it is The Once and Future King. And I have it here in the one-volume hardcover. I have a couple of different editions of this thing, but the one-volume hardcover is the sturdiest, and it needs to be because I go back to The Once and Future King all the time. So when I was happy to find, a cheap hardcover, then I reinforced it, gave it a Tassley bookmark, and put it where it belongs. And that's it. That is bookshelf number 7 of the tall east wall bookcase, which is the penultimate. That is the penultimate shelf. So the next one, I don't know how I'm going to shelve it. I don't know how I'm going to film it. I'll have to lay on the floor with my knees poking up like a teenager looking at magazines. But the next one's the last one. And then we'll move on to some other bookshelf, some other bookcase here in this room or elsewhere. So thank you for your patience, those of you who are still around. And I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.